In this video we are going to discuss the term undefined or not defined or does not exist. They are all the same thing, right? And then we are going to also talk about the largest possible domain of what a given function. So if you don't know what this thing is, now if you don't know exactly how functions work, so this is just a simple diagram to demonstrate that. Let's say we want the printed pictures of what your appearance, right? So let's say you are here, this is your appearance. So when we take a picture with you with a camera, so that you have to put that inside a printing machine, right? So this is a printing machine, and then the printing machine gives us what your pictures, your outcome. Is that okay? So you are here, you have to take whatever you are putting inside the machine will give us what? An outcome. So this is just how simple functions work. So technically this is the domain. So whatever we are going to put in, calling it input, is our domain. And then the printing machine gives us what? The functions. And then the outcome is what? The printed image. So that's the output. So input, the machine, and then output, right? So that's how simple it. So always you need an what? Input for the machine to transform the input to our output, right? So your appearance is here. You take a picture of that, then you print it out, then you get your printed image out. So that's how simple functions work. Now this is a function notation. It says that we are going to plug in this x, right? So let's say you are x, you are by name x, then you have to plug inside this machine to get a result out, right? So that's how simple a function is. So whatever you are going to plug inside the machine, you must get a result out. Okay, now the word undefined means that when you plug in that thing, it will not give us anything out, right? So let's say you are here, when you will put it inside the machine, we are not going to get your printed image out. That is exactly when you say the thing does not exist, undefined, right? Okay, now which value of x, when we look at this thing, which number when you put inside this function, it will not give us any answer, right? This machine here cannot get any answer. So what that means is that whenever we take a picture of your appearance, when we plug that into our printing machine, we are not going to get a printed image over here. Then it means that maybe you are ghost in some case, right? So that is exactly what. So those ghosts that are the thing that we are talking about and that undefined or does not exist. Okay. So now which value, who is that ghost here? When you plug it into this machine, it will not give us any outcome. Right? So when you look at this thing, so anything that I plug in 0, when I plug in 0 plus 1, it will give me 1, minus 1 plus 1, it will give us 0, and so on and so forth. So when you look at this thing, you can see exactly that any number that I put in here, it will produce something out, right? So in that case, we see that this thing is defined for all values of what? X, right? So that simply means that anything that I put inside that machine, I will get a result. So you can say that technically this x is a member of what? R, right? So this x is coming from R. So for all s, right? For all s, it means that for any value, for anything that I plug inside this particular machine, I will get a result, right? So x is defined for all values of x. We don't have any number, any value of x that when I plug in inside this particular thing, it will not give me an outcome. It will surely give me an outcome based on how the machine looks like, or technically based on how the function looks like. Okay. Now let's look at the second one. So you have another function here. So this is another machine. Now we want to find the values of what? The undefined. Of course, these are all pure exams questions, right? So they say you should find the value of x. So you should find that ghost that when you plug into our printing machine, we are not going to get the printed image of that person. How do you tackle this type of question? So for this reason, the key or the rule of doing that is that you have to equate the down, which is the denominator, to 0. So the idea is that when you equate this thing to 0, the reason we cannot divide anything on top by 0, right? There's no way you can divide neither 1 by 0 or any number by 0, so you can't do that. So that is the reason why you have it to equate the down one to 0, should in case you have a rational function. So this is what we call a rational function, right? Something over something. If you have this type of fraction, they ask you to find the value of this x that make the function undefined. In other words, the goals that when you plug into the machine, it will not give us any printed image. Then you have to equate the down one to 0, right? And then solve this. When you solve this thing nicely, you arrive at s is equal to minus 1 over 2, right? When you solve this thing nicely, you arrive at s is equal to minus 1 over 2. So this guy is the ghost now. Can you see? This guy is the ghost. So when you plug this guy inside what this machine, we are not going to get a result. So let's try. If you wish, you want to try. So down one, we are just equating the down one. So let's say we have f of x is equal to x over 2x plus 1. Right? We have to solve the down one. So s plus 1 is equal to 0. This implies that 2s is equal to minus 1. Then s is equal. You are dividing both sides by what? 2. So that will be minus 1 over 2. Right? We say that this guy is the goal. So when we plug this guy inside this machine, we are not going to get any answer. So you can try that. So whatever you see x, you replace that by what? Minus 1 over 2. So the top will be minus 1 over 2, right? So and then the down will be 2 into bracket minus 1 over 2 and then plus 1. Is that okay? So the down here you can see that the 2 will go out, so you are left with minus 1 plus 1, right? Minus 1 plus 1, which is equal to 0. Then in the long run, you are having minus 1 over 2 all divided by 0. It's not possible. This thing is not possible. You cannot divide any number on top by 0, right? So this is boom. This guy here is what the goals that we don't need this guy. Of course, so this is the guy that will make the function undefined, not defined, does not exist, right? So this is how simple you solve what? A rational function like this. So when they ask you to find the number of x, that's make the value undefined. So this is how you solve. You equate it down 1 to 0 and solve it nicely. Okay, now you have a different function here. That's a g of s is equal to s squared minus 9 all divided by s squared minus 3s plus 2. So they say you should find the value of x. That's made this thing undefined. So how do you solve this type of question? As I said earlier on, you have to equate the down to 0. This is what a rational function. Is that okay? You equate it down to 0. You can see that this is a quadratic, right? If you don't know how to solve a quadratic, just comment down below, right? Comment down below. We are ready to help you. So this is a quadratic. One way of solving that is factorization, and then you can use the almighty formula as well as completing of squares. So anyone is a choice. Here you are not restricted. Is that okay? So when you solve this, and the easiest one to solve this maybe is by factorization. So I factorize easily here. So you can see that I did my calculation. So I'll get the 2 factors to be x minus 1 and s minus 2 equal to 0. When you solve this thing nicely, you can see that x is equal to 1 as well as s is equal to 2. So the value of the s, those goals, this guy, you can see that when you solve a quadratic, you can get 2 values of the s. So those goals that we cannot get their image out are what? 1 and 2. So these are the 2 guys that will make the function undefined, right? They will make the function not to be defined. Is that okay? So you have to omit these 2 guys if you want to get a printed image of what? Any other people. Is that okay? Now here is another example. So let's say this is also another rational function, right? So this is also another rational function that is 1 over square root of x minus 1. So how do you solve? They say you should find the value of x that made the function undefined. Right, so you always equate it down one. So this type of function is that you have to make sure that you equate whatever is under the radical. This is what I'm calling the radical, right? The square root sign. Whatever number is here, whatever you are having here, that should be greater than or equal to 0. Is that okay? So that should be greater than or equal to. The reason is that this guy doesn't support a negative number. Is that okay? The square root sign doesn't support a negative number. That is why you have to make sure that anything here has to be greater than or equal to 0. Right? So that's why we are equating whatever is here is greater than or equal to. So when you solve these things, you can see that s is what? S should be greater than or equal to 1, right? Greater than or equal to 1. Is that okay? So x has to be greater than or equal to 1 for this guy to work. So the value of the x that made the function defined here should be s should be greater than or equal to 1. Is that okay? So that is all. Very, very simple. This is how you solve the undefined terms in mathematics. Now what about if they ask you to find the largest possible domain of what a given function. This undefined, the largest possible domain of a given function, they have some relationship in common, right? So that relationship is that you have to solve the same thing, the same process, right? The same process. The way I solve this one, you have to solve it the same process. But how do you write what your solution? So for here, you have that s is equal to minus what 1/2, right? So minus 1/2. So the way you write this solution for the largest possible domain is a truth set, right? So this is how you write a truth set. So the values of the domains of this function, this particular one, is that we need x, right? Such that s here is a member of what? S is coming from what? A real numbers, right? This is the notation of a real numbers, except or comma s is not equal to that ghost here. Yes, we don't need that ghost, right? So this is how you write the domain of what this function, right? So we need x. So that where is the x coming from? S is coming from the real numbers, right? So s is coming from this place. And then is it all the s? No, except that s is not equal to 1/. So this is how I write the possible domain of what a given function, right? You can even decided to ignore this and write that, maybe let's say, so maybe another way of writing this thing is that you can use the English s, that s is coming from what? This guy, s is coming from here, except you can use the word, right? Except s is not s, except s is equal to minus 1/2. Except this guy, we don't want this guy. If this guy comes in, then this guy is going to spoil our machine. Okay, so we don't want this guy out. So this is how you write a domain of what a function, of course a rational function. So the same way you have to write the domain of this one after solving the undefined things, and then you write your domain nicely. Alright, so if you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to share with your friends on social media, and you may consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, and you get more content like it. So thank you for watching.